Okay, so this is just one of the presentations we saw at the RDG camp. Just a reminder, I've got on there what RDG is a little bit. And this one was on kind of mental preparation and more specifically about how to kind of, well, we'll get into it. So here's some quotes that they pulled up. Let's let you read them. And for anyone who was not at RDG, just give me your kind of like a reaction to this, or what is, or if you know like what this, if you have a way to describe what they're describing in other words, let me know what that is.
I think it's rapid thinking is what um, I believe I practice. Um, the thinking based on experience and previously seen scenarios and frameworks on the structure of the game that I've learned through, my free training. So I
Yeah,
don't think it's not thinking, maybe it's just thinking fast.
yeah, I can see those way of looking at it. They're
So
gonna, we're gonna talk about this in like two distinctions. There's like a thinking and there's like a something else. Like here it's called actioning in like this quote here from Nika. So this is like if you've watched international test rugby, like there's a Georgian referee, so that and then so that's who Nika is, just so you know who that is. And then Luke Rogan is a MLR and recently got assigned to U20 Six Nations assignment this upcoming year, so also a World Rugby ref. Go
So
ahead.
I was going to say this may be cheating because I am fairly close with Luke, and his game is actually this weekend in Ireland. You should watch the U20 Six Nations this weekend because it is an all-American crew. If we count Canada as part of America, it is all North American crew.
And a South African who is now a
Who is
USA.
yeah, yes, it
Then
is
it's
a
then it's all America.
and technically Luke is from New Zealand. So we are
And
putting
repped in
it as an
Australia.
American crew. It is, we are a melting pot. Anyways, what Luke is really getting at here is trusting your gut of, if you're 50-50, make a call and don't dwell on it. Move on, go to the next thing.
To kind of
Okay,
chime in on this, I feel like if you're in a game trying to decide what decision you need to make in the game, that is the wrong time to be learning and thinking and reading. You should have done the practice already so that you see something, you interpret it, and you make your call, and then you can review it and think about it later. But the game moves too fast to just be thinking about it and be trying to decide what to do in that moment.
yeah. I like stuff that everybody said. Ellen is like in the right in the vein of where this is going of converting this in. So, one thing that people call this is flow, being in a flow state. And if you've ever been an athlete or like remember when you played a sport, there's probably a time where you felt like you weren't super conscious of like what in fact was going on, but you probably like did some amazing play and then looked back later and like I was just in like a flow state. And you hear that creatives talk about that too, like writers and stuff. They'll be like, or musicians, like I was in a flow state when that happened. And this is Roz called this automaticity, whatever. It's academic word, same kind of idea though. But to Ellen's point, like the way to get there is preparation and goal setting. And Alex said like to trust your gut, and it's like yeah, it's kind of that's kind of what it is. But we can also like build up the gut rather than just like going out there every day and just trusting the gut, right? Like we can do some of this stuff in advance. What was useful with the RDG is they had this framework of like if I see X situation and that's like a pretty specific situation, then I do action, right? And that's the kind of thing that you can practice to Ellen's point. And so Roz is really encouraging us to practice the whole piece of that. I've seen this. Now what I'm going to do, and then practice that whole action. That is like your words. So practicing what your phrasing is going to be, getting that down to succinct, no white noise, your tone. They talked in another presentation about having kind of like three levels of response, so like tone one, two, three. Tone one is kind of how I'm talking to you now. It's just going to be this. Tone two is a little more sterner, and tone three is like, that's a dangerous tackle, mate. Right. I'm sending someone to the bin. Is often where three comes in. but that's just an example of kind of like that there are degrees of like how am I delivering this, and then body language is also a big part of that. A lot of communication, like 80%, is nonverbal. So it's like, how are you standing? Is it like, am I coming hands open? Am I like, am my arms folded? That sort of thing. Posture comes into play with that. So, and practicing all of those pieces is part of it. So what I wanted to do here is here's some scenarios. So these are that situation box that I had in the last slide. Here's your situation. And you can think about like, what is the action that would come from that? And so what I want to do is kind of like, especially people who weren't in the RDG, I'd like you to pick one of these right now and just think about like what you would do as a response to that. And then like I would like to have a few people demonstrate, just hop back on the call. And then I'll say to people who have been in the RDG to kind of give an example. Does anybody want to take one of these and do one of them?
I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to take when I walk up to a scrum.
Yeah.
Because Jake, you and I had talked about this during a coaching session we did. So generally, the first scrum, outside of under 9 or under 18s, I don't do a ton of front row chats before the game. Obviously, introduce myself, ask if there's any questions, but don't I don't pin myself. So first scrum, when I'm walking up, I'm setting a standard of like, guys, here's our distance, or I'm sorry, players, here's our distance. We're going to start nice and slow. Let's see how we react. See how the first scrum goes. And then when I'm walking up, I'm adjusting things from every scrum. So I had a game this fall. First scrum, the number 9 was standing way far away from the scrum on the first put in. Walking up to the second scrum, I had a word with him and we adjusted it. So kind of doing that preventative refereeing and that relationship building when I'm walking up to a scrum.
Okay, so we're looking here for this practice is, so say you're in, so like I love that situation. You've identified one. First one, this other thing happened. I'm coming up to the second scrum. Give us you're walking up to that second scrum. That 9's doing the same thing. Give us, I'd like if you were on video as well, but I want you to give us what you're saying, the tone you're saying it with, and kind of like what you look like as you say it.
Yeah, so I'm walking up to the scrum. I'll kind of like, hey, 9, can you just come here for a second? Hey, I noticed you were a little far away on that last scrum. I need you within a meter of the feed. You're just standing a little too far out. I don't want to call you for offsides. Can you just make sure you're staying a little bit closer? Any questions about it? All right, cool. Moving on. Then whether they react positively or negatively, then at the next scrum, hey, 9, looked really good at that last scrum. Keep that up. Or 9, you're still a little bit too far off. Listen, I don't want to escalate it up, but you're not where you need to be. I need you to stay closer.
Okay.
And then generally from there, we're going to sanctioning.
Yeah. So I love the tone there. It's like I'm just asking for like a little bit of behavior change. If they do it correctly, then the next scrum you're making a point to positively reinforce. And then yeah, and so like there we just had Alec demonstrate. He's like, I've done it with tone. I've picked my words, and that's the thing that we're looking for out of the practice for some of these things.
Yep. So talking about tone, I generally start with a very friendly of like, hey, I noticed this, but I don't think anyone else did. Little insider baseball, just stay closer to the scrum for me. And like very friendly, very approachable, and then escalating the tone either more positive or more negative depending on the action I need to see out of the player.
Yep. Yeah, so that wasn't like a blowing time off situation, bringing the attention.
Right.
It's just like on the walk to have a word. Cool. Does anybody else want to grab one of these and do it? Someone from the RDG group. Do another example.
I can take one, Jake.
Go ahead.
So I'll take the first scenario of number 9 complaining about calls. I won't address it during open play, but once we are on our way to a set piece, I'll find my way where I'm kind of next to that player and we're both walking and facing in roughly the same direction. So it's kind of like we're just buddies on our way to the next set piece. And I will say very specifically, we can probably cut the chatter between the two of us and you focus on your game and I'll focus on mine, and I think we'll have a better product. Similar to what Alex said, depending on how that person reacts to that first like little, hey, maybe just chill out on shouting at me type of conversation. I'll address it the second time slightly differently, where it's facing more towards that person, still with open body language, but now I'm kind of, well, this is becoming a problem. I'm going to need to address it if it continues. So the second time would be something more like, I don't want to have to change the outcome of a ruck or something with a penalty because of you. Do you understand? And then if it happens again, then it's going to be time off, captain. This player needs to stop shouting at me. And I'm not even talking to the player anymore. I'm talking to the captain.
Cool. For the people who weren't in the RDG that I've asked to look at one of these scenarios, if you want to demonstrate one of these, you just have to do just the scenario. We don't need like, okay, if they keep doing it or whatever, that's kind of extra. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
It's more of a just a this was super uncomfortable for a lot of people at the RDG camps. We did like a 4-person rotation, and you had to do the like one of these, but you had to approach it or evolve it as you talked to a different person that came in your group. So I just want to reassure you, if it feels weird, it's okay. It's gonna feel weird, but it's better to feel weird when you're in your living room, maybe saying this to the TV. It's way better to do it then than do it in a game where you're, you know, instead of coming up with what you're gonna say, you already have a framework of like, all right, I've done this before in my living room. I know what I'm gonna do. Um, but I think also it plays into just like I think it's coming up here, but like how you're perceived. Like sometimes we can think that we're being really personable, but we might come off as being gun shy or passive. And I think just figuring out like how to phrase things in a concise way versus that's also a level 1, 2, or 3 is the thing that I think a lot of people at the camps were like, oh shit, I thought I was coming off this way. I'm not. I'm coming off really passive, and that was something that like I had happen a couple times, if you can believe that. So so it's I think it's just really interesting to like hear it from another person. Um, that like, oh, well, I get what you were saying, and that was really personable, but maybe try doing it this way instead. Um, so just food for thought. It's gonna feel weird as hell, and that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's important to remind people like this is difficult. It's gonna feel weird because it's something probably new to you, but pays off, right? To Jeff's point earlier, a lot of the stuff that is more automatic for Jeff is stuff that he's had experience with, like because it happened in game. And this is a way to like give yourself experience without having to do it in game. To Butter's point, you don't want to be doing it right in the middle. Um, I'm going to do one, and then we'll see if anyone else wants to take a crack, but I'll do the one closing the gap at the line out. So I've set it. I'm at the back of the line out. I see a team like already closing down. I'm just going to go boop, just so that the throw doesn't happen, and walk up to the, and I'll ask them, blue, you need to shift off it. Don't step in. Here we go. Does anybody else want to take a crack at one? Or would they like to see somebody do one of the other ones on the screen? You can ask for somebody else to do one.
Andy, do you want to do one?
Oh, I suppose I could. Let's do 2 dangerous tackles in the first 15 minutes since high school and middle school season is coming up, and it's going to happen. All right, so obviously call captains in. Guys, Reds had 2 dangerous tackles, one high, one I deemed as dangerous. Whatever it is, the nerves, the intensity level, I'm not asking you to bring that down. I'm asking you make the tackles safe. Please go talk to your teams.
Okay.
So, question, and I want to implore on this. So I understand at the U18 level, one team has 2 high tackles. Why are we talking to both captains if one of them didn't infringe? So to push back a little bit, and not to say you're wrong in by any means, I talk to the captains separately ever before I'll bring them together. So it'll be like, hey, Red, 2 high tackles in a row. We need to fix this. I need you to raise your standard before I have to intervene. Then I'll go over to the white captain. White, listen, I know there were a couple high tackles. I just want to let you know I'm taking care of it if you can just control your players for me. Like, please don't retaliate. I'm taking care of it. Just trust me on this. And then, like, another instance, that's when I would bring both captains together. Just me.
Yeah, I think, and especially at that level, high school more than middle school, it would be a transparency thing. Be like, hey, this is the standard I'm setting. Let's team, B know that it is something that we're watching for from the match, and that's the standard we'd like to set.
Yeah.
I mean, scenario specific, it's, if it's one-way traffic and it's only one team making tackles the whole match, obviously one captain's needed to address, but, others deal with as necessary.
Cool.
I don't think it's ever a bad idea to make yourself heard to both teams, right? Like both the captains. I'm not, and sometimes it's like the whole team, right? Like, depends on the situation, but it's great for consistency, like you said, Andy, for sure, right? So that everybody knows really what the expectation is. It's only the first 15 minutes of the game. There's, to really set that standard. Hopefully you're relating it back to saying what you said in your pre-jam, your pre-talk, and you said, look, we had this conversation. You guys told me that you were going to make sure that the tackles stayed safe today, right? And so you can relate it back to that for that to reinforce that consistency even more. But it's not a bad idea to at least have the other captain within earshot so that they know that you're looking for this. Because if I was a player and I was the non-offending team and I was the captain and I heard the referee talk to that team, I'd be grateful to the referee because he's addressing the situation, and our players then aren't getting as riled up, because that's what happens. Retaliation can build through those situations. And B, I know that the referee's watching for this now. And so even though he didn't say, hey, KO, I'm talking to you too, or I want you here, I heard that. And I'm going to go back to my team without even having the instruction. And I'm going to say, the ref is watching for high tackles, guys. And like, both that de-escalates it for my own team and it lets my team know that the ref is watching for this as well. So I don't think it's a bad idea to have them. It's not maybe a requirement, like you said, Alex, for sure. It's not like a necessary thing, but it's not a bad thing to reinforce consistency, to de-escalate in advance, and it really helps manage the game, especially if you're enforcing the consistency that you've already established as baseline during your pregame chat about where the safety zone is for those tackles. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I love this that there is variation in this, and so when we talked about the situation that is, it's like the specificity of that situation matters. So we've got some situations here where, oh, will I bring both captains to a single conversation, have 2 separate ones, and that will depend on the context. And so part of this practice is building that into your situation. Like if 2 dangerous tackles happens in a specific kind of game with a specific kind of team, right? Like build that in, practice as many of the scenarios as you want to. The problem with this is like obviously like the iterations of this are massive, and so I would focus on ones that you are likely to happen in your games that you're currently not comfortable with. Right? Take off a bite-sized chunk, only pick a couple scenarios because they do have these iterations, and so it's something that is manageable for you to actually work through like in a given week or however long like you're going to goal set for that. But these are just examples of scenarios. You can make them more specific a lot of times as what's necessary. But it was some ideas here. And last point to like what Butter was saying earlier, you can do this while you watch rugby, have the sound off, you see something happen, pause the game and say what you would say out loud, like stand up and do the whole thing in your living room.
Or like I just want to say you don't have to do the entire match. Like I think
Right.
it's kind of intimidating a little bit in a weird way. So like just choose like, okay, for this next 5 minute sector, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna enjoy the rest of the half, right? Like make it achievable.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Anything else before I move on? Okay. Last thing I want to talk about here. A little bit of a shift, but this is related to some of the tone stuff. So I think Butter was saying earlier, it's like this is how I'm perceived. Is it assertive or not? And just ref brand. This one was like, oh, I wanted to actually pull an example up. So, oh no, I get an ad. Can you guys hear this okay?
No
Not at all?
audio.
Okay, fuck it. Yeah, if we troubleshot this before. Anyways, like you guys know Nigel Owens. I think everyone has heard him referee before. You kind of know he's got like a style to what he's doing. There's a little bit of humor, that sort of thing. That's part of the brand that he has, and this is so what we mean by brand. In the session, they compared this with like Holly Davidson. I know Phil, you've worked when you were in AR somewhere. You had one of like the HSBC refs, and you said it's the pale guy who's bald. That you said
George.
George says almost nothing the entire match, right?
Yeah, I
And
was a sub-controller at LA HSBC sevens, and the refs at that level talk about how few words they can say, which is really, I mean, it's seven, so you already aren't talking very much, but it's a very interesting concept. And he does a lot with body language. If you watch HSBC sevens, I think George is probably one of the best people with body language in sevens in particular. Him and AJ are both very good, but George is probably the best.
but those are like so George's amount of speaking, and obviously it changes a little bit for the game, but like that's you can think about that as your brand too. Like what's the brand I want to have in 15s versus the brand I want to have in sevens, and that can be different. And but like the point is like Nigel kind of like he throws more jokes into his stuff. That's a thing he can kind of get away with now that he's like he got to that level of being that good of a ref and then could do that. Whereas you compare to like a Holly Davidson who also says very little during her 15s matches, and that those are all kind of like choices you make. Like there's how assertive you are is part of this, but I think it's the point here, and I'll open it up to other people at RDG to share their experiences. But like, how do you think people are perceiving you, and how do you want to be perceived, right? And you can write down what those adjectives are, or maybe even like ask people after games and stuff, and figure out if like you're being perceived the way you want. But that's like part of the brand and like how you relate to the teams and the players. Yeah, go ahead, Marge.
Um, so to elaborate on that a little bit, like this is why I think watching film is painful for people. A lot of the time because like we know what our intention was, but the way that it came out and how it was perceived, and you can see the body language from players afterward too, after you've said something, because body language is, another way that we all speak to each other. Like I think that's something where like if you can watch it with a critical and constructive lens, but also just take it as like, okay, this is like a couple things that I want to build upon, or like I need to stop doing that and I need to start doing this instead. I think, again, taking those things that you see as like maybe one or two things that are achievable for you to implement, in your next match, I think that's the goal. Because like I think also like we're always all evolving. Like your brand is going to evolve with you as you grow. So just being kind to yourself about it, you know. But that's why watching film is important to see, because then you get it from like that third lens that isn't involved at all, and you can actively hear like how the sidelines might be hearing you, how the coaches might be hearing you, and that's also important for optics, right? So I think like that's just what I wanted to say about this piece.
I think that's
Um,
great part. Oh, go ahead, Alec.
no, so I was just going to say, from my perspective, is I tend to talk a little bit more than other referees during a game, just from a positive relationship building. So creating that buy-in is really important. But the thing is, like making your words count. You don't want to talk so much where it becomes white noise and no one's listening to when you really need to get something across. So the economy of words is really important. Are you talking to talk, or are you talking because you have something that people need to hear? And I think it takes a lot of practice, but finding that balance is really important.
That's a really good point, Alec, for sure, is like, saying what is valuable for the players to hear and really, really I just challenge everyone to stay focused on why we are reffing the game. And it's to encourage safety, it's to encourage competition, and it's to encourage fun, right? Those are the three things that they tell us in the RDG that is like our job to help to put the framework of the game. And so, that's something that I always try to relate back to. And then to Margaret's point too about the evolution of your brand and who you are, the way that we can stay cognizant of that is tracking it, right? So taking note of each game mentally or with a buddy or whatever about, how your communication style was received, perceived, if there was a lot of friction, if there was escalation in the game, what did you do to manage or control that? So tracking is really helpful. And then, something that I have learned in the last couple years of reffing has been that I think the levels of the games that we referee are very critical towards how you handle your game management. So, when I'm on a D2 men's game, there's very little chat from me throughout the whole game in general. I expect them to know the laws of the game. I expect to communicate only with the captain. And I expect the game to go pretty quickly, actually. So I want to keep that continuity and flow of the game going really strongly without my interference, right? I want to have minimal game management there. But if I am on a high school game or maybe a women's tournament or something like that, where you know that there's a variability of experience there, you're trying to help to also build the rugby culture and the respect for the referee, but you're helping with game management. So, there's the in between. You get these like D3, D4 men's games as well, where, these guys have maybe played rugby for a long time, but they still need some of the parameters set. So in some of the youth or maybe women's tournament games, that I've refed, I will slow down for the scrums, for example, and just reiterate my main talking points. All right, guys, we're looking for this, this, and this real quick, to help manage that game. Um, Somewhere in between, there's a couple of things that I've gotten used to, which is just, you said, Alec, the economy of your words, right? Calling literally just saying a one-word statement to help set the parameters of which laws are being enacted. So, for example, when a tackle actually happens, that like swift second decision when a tackle happens, depend if it's a D2 men's game, I'm not going to do this, but kind of in between that level, like I'm saying, is where I would say the word tackle. And then it's just that one word, and the players know that all the laws that they've learned then apply for the tackle, release, roll away, all that good stuff, right? Um, and then when the ruck gets formed, I might say ruck and just call it for them initially. And then the laws change, right? The parameters of that situation then change. And so just keeping it that simple has been really helpful, I think, in some of the sloppier games, especially during the continuity pieces, rucks, mauls, things like that, so they understand really what they're responsible for in that moment. Again, I wouldn't do this for a D2 men's game, but I would do this for some of those in between games where, they might still just need that little refresher, but they should know the laws. And then going down to the lower levels with high school and things like that, I'd do a lot more game management, right? Like if I see someone that's about to come in from the side, I'll say seven. Hold, and like really actually tell them not to do the stupid thing that they're about to do. And I found that's really helpful in those kind of learning training environments a little bit more. So there's a gradient scale for me, and this is something I've been working on as a referee in the last several years, and I found it to be really beneficial to really identify what level you're reffing. And you can also back off of that in the middle of the game, stick to one type of communication pattern for your first half. And then at second half, if you want to switch it up, you can talk to the captains and say, hey, I've been pretty vocal in this first half, but I'm going to back off. You guys are playing a really disciplined game. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you play. That's fine. Or you can say, I've been a little quiet in this first half. I'm going to really jump in here a little bit more and help you guys with some more game management. And ultimately, I do this because my penalty count goal for every game that I referee is less than 17, which is a very strict number. So, it doesn't always happen that way. But that's my goal. That's like really, really a goal. And I feel like that's been my goal for the last months, or a few years that I've been reffing. So that's a couple comments about kind of different levels that we referee and how best to apply a different style of game management to that. And then to your point, Phil,
Hold on a second, Kelly. Andy, I think we're getting an echo of Kelly's audio from you.
Let me mute it.
sorry.
It's not you? Okay, go ahead, Kelly.
Can you say like
Yeah.
the last 30 seconds?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I just, talking about me, it's just saying that that's been my goal, right, for the last couple of years has been really to adjust my communication style by the level of experience in the game and then to pay attention to it during the game and communicate with the captains about communicating about communication. So I'll tie it in with that sevens is a very different game than 15s. And it's a lot faster. The rucks are a lot cleaner. And so you don't need as much game management there. I recently was an AR for a referee down in New Mexico for just a social game that they had the New Mexico Brew House against the Highwaymen rugby team. So I went down there just to kind of dick around and I ended up as their AR and we were mic'd up, right? And one of the referees is one of the referees that's in the pathway and he does so many sevens games. But this is a group of hooligans playing rugby to be sure, right? Adult men that have played for a long time. There's all sorts of dark arts happening and stuff. And so he did a very good job if he was reffing sevens. It was very minimal communication, not a lot of game management, and I counted his penalties were in the high 20s, right? And the players were heated. They were frustrated at the referee. I talked to them afterwards about all of that. And so he's considered to be a very good ref. But I think that he refs a lot of sevens and he applied his sevens. His calls were accurate, but they were brutal against these players who might have needed like a back off number seven or, like a little bit more game management. So just something to note that I think that you can adjust not only based on the experience level, but on the style of game that you're playing, whether it's sevens, whether it's 15s, high school versus adults, and really kind of be in tune with what's the most effective line of communication for those players. So long-winded, but my 2 cents.
To finish the thought on this, I just realized I have access to best referee in the U.S., Kat Roche, has a Kat Roche dictionary of phrases she uses. I have access to it. I forgot that I did. I will share that with everyone. So the phrases that she intentionally uses at the international level to dictate players and like the phrases she uses that are clear and concise. I will drop that. I don't know how. If let me see if I can just put it in the chat.
Cool. This is the last thing that we have today is this slide, so I'm kind of wrapping up ideas. I think a lot of the stuff that got said just now is kind of like that there are a lot of variations and variability in like how you actually implement this day to day. So that's a great time to like work with a peer or work with a referee coach or a mentor about like what am I doing in this particular game? How did it work in this time? And iterate on that as well as Marge mentioned self-study, be like, okay, I tried it this way at this level game. Did it work? Did I get a change in behavior that I was looking for? So cool. I'll grab that link, Alex. I'll make that sure that makes it into the notes as well. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Any final thoughts? Thanks everyone for attending. Well, if not, we'll see you out there and probably do some virtual trainings before the spring season kicks off. Yeah. Good to see everyone. Have a good weekend.
Toodles.
Cheers.